everyone. I'm Ryan from Fireside Yankees. I'm joined by a very special guest. He is a scout and writer for Baseball Prospectus, the one and only Smith Brickner. Smith, I really appreciate you coming on today and providing your insight and knowledge, not just on the Yankees, the Major League side, but on the minor league side as well. Smith, how are you doing today, my friend?
My man Ryan, I'm doing good. I know we were talking about doing this in Florida, and it's finally coming to fruition. So excited to talk some shop with you today.
Absolutely. And, obviously you had some time in Florida that we will get to talk about because I know you got to do some fun stuff at the minor league complex. But look at the major league side first. One of the guys who you were talking a good bit about in the offseason was Ben Rice. And he's gotten off to a white hot start. I don't think there's any other way to put it. How much are you buying into success early on the season, and why do you think he's had such a strong start to his year?
Yeah. When we scout, Ryan, we have what's called the 20/80 scale. For those who might not be familiar, and 20 being the lowest grade and 80 being the highest. If you're a 55, you're an above average player. If you're a 60, you might make a couple of all-star games. You are a very solid contributor. And if you're a 70 or 80, you're a star or superstar. So just to put that into perspective, when Baseball Prospectus evaluate, we are trying to grade them as if they hit their 75th percentile outcome. So when you see our grades, it's what is a 75th percentile outcome for that player. For me, I wrote that Ben Rice was a 60. I wrote that last year before he even made the major leagues. I saw just an incredibly impressive plate approach that was someone that didn't chase at all, someone that made enough contact in the zone, and someone that had an optimized pulled fly ball ratio. And for the first few weeks of last year in the majors, we kind of saw that. He was really impressive, and I think he was especially impressive on fastballs in the zone, and that was a big deal. But you really saw him start to crater a bit against breaking pitches and off speed. Against breaking pitches last year, hit 163. 083 against off-speed pitches. That's really tough. This year, he's absolutely dominating on fastballs, which is obviously the most thrown pitch type in the majors. He's doing very well against four-seamers, against sinkers, two-seamers, you name it. But what's really impressive is that he's continued to be very disciplined at the plate. He's not chasing pitches outside the zone. And oh, by the way, he's hitting the ball a lot harder and is swinging the bat harder too. So if you're looking for a guy that is optimized for Yankee Stadium, that has I think a very complete offensive profile, he may not have 70 grade game power, but he might be one of those guys where the raw power that you might see in batting practice isn't what you're going to see in the game. Like, for instance, it's not so impressive in batting practice, but he just hits home runs and he just hits for power. I think it's legitimate, Ryan. I wrote him up as a 60 last year. I stood my ground even in the offseason. I did not think they needed to pursue Paul Goldschmidt because they had Ben Rice, and Paul Goldschmidt's doing well. But the point being that I thought he could have easily slid in to first base, and I have more confidence than ever that he's going to be this team's future first baseman.
I would have to agree in the aspect of him as the future at first base, especially. Look, I think it would take. Actually, I don't think there's a number that Paul Goldschmidt could put up OPS wise that would make me want to re-up. I feel like you just take the 1 year of production and then move on, and you take that money that you may have reinvested at first and reinvest it elsewhere. Because look, the Yankees have treated their payroll. They have paid $300 million. They've paid a lot of money, but clearly it's a finite resource for them. And on that same tune of young players, I think it's going to be an important part of them being able to spend, or being willing to, not able, willing to spend on key players. They are seventh in play appearances taken by players age 26 and younger, and those players entering play today combined for 139 WRC plus. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how important it is for the Yankees to continue getting production from young players and what effect that could have on their outlook beyond just 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to take a look at the Dodgers to understand the implication here, because what the Dodgers have done is they have added through free agency, right? Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, right? But it also allows you to be opportunistic in the trade market, in the sense of you can go get a Mookie Betts when he's in his final year, and you can trade prospects because you develop enough of them where it really doesn't phase you. The problem with the Yankees is not the player development, Ryan. I've made this case on Twitter. I will continue to make this case publicly. I think they are a top-notch player development organization. I have a lot of respect for the people that work in player development, the coaches, which by the way get poached every single offseason, but also the internal front office player development people, some of whom I've developed personal relationships with, and I really appreciate the way that they think about player development. And if you look all throughout the major leagues, Ryan, you will see guys that were drafted or signed by the Yankees as amateurs. They are littered all throughout the league. Now, the question becomes, how is the major league front office allocating those prospects, and are they maximizing their value? I would say predominantly the answer has been no, aside from the guys of the Anthony Volpes, the Austin Wellses, right? Those kinds of players that they've maximized, which are first round picks. You better maximize them. So I think it's becoming, I think the front office is beginning to understand the need to incorporate younger players into the major league roster, because you cannot continue to spend money on second and third tier free agents, or guys that would be second and third tier free agents, in the ways of Aaron Hicks and DJ LeMahieu. And mind you, DJ LeMahieu and Aaron Hicks were good players when they were signed, but they were signed for way too long. They were signed to low AAV deals to lessen the financial burden to sign other older players instead of just giving other younger players an opportunity. So it all is very layered here, right? But when you allow your young players to blossom and frankly fall on their face at times in the major leagues, it gives you that flexibility to then trade a lot of different guys that are established in the major leagues that are young, which are going to have more trade value than any prospect would, because they've shown it they can do in the major leagues. Perfect case in point here is Alex Verdugo, key piece in the Mookie Betts trade. I think the Dodgers would do that 10 times out of 10 in hindsight, right? And so you can either trade them, or they become a cheaper element of your roster that allows you to only go after the top tier Juan Soto's, Shohei Ohtani's in free agency. You're not going down to the second and third tier and paying them first-rate money like they did with Carlos Rodon. So it becomes a much bigger conversation about overall roster construction and resource allocation. But there's no question in my mind the Yankees are a top flight player development group, especially considering where they draft each year. The fact that they've developed enough first round picks recently signifies to me that they are good at developing players. It's just, how are we allocating those players to the roster and in trades?
Yeah, and I think you make a great point when we talk about roster construction, because look at a guy like Austin Wells, for example, who contributed 3.4 WAR for the Yankees. What would you have to pay on the open market to get 3.4 WAR at the catching position? I know Anthony Volpe hasn't necessarily crushed it offensively, but what would it cost? I mean, we saw what the New York Yankees had to do to get something resembling production at shortstop, and that was trading for Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. That's a trade that I think they didn't really give up much of value, but it cost them money, and money, again, is a finite resource. So, or for the Yankees, they treat it as a finite resource. I get that to an extent.
Sure.
But
yeah. It's a whole different conversation.
Right. We're on the same wavelength of pair. I think we could have a whole conversation about it. But, in respects to player development, we also fully agree in terms of just the Yankees churn out so many big leaguers. It would just be nice if those big leaguers got to play for the New York Yankees a little more often. And sticking to the big league team for this question here, look, the Yankees are 8-7, and they are above 500. And that, it's not the worst start in the world. But I think you could also sit here and say there are some pretty obvious concerns. There's some pretty notable concerns. What are some of your biggest concerns for the 2025 team? And A, do you think they're fixable? And B, how would you go about fixing those problems?
Yeah, I've been appreciative of what the offense has done. Again, it is still early April, right? We're just at half a month of baseball there. I would like to see the offense stay healthy, because if they lose the Bellingers of the world, right, who I don't even think is that good at this point, they just don't really have the upper minors depth to supplant those injuries. So I think depth on the offensive side is a question mark. And I think you're also beginning to see warts in the depth of their pitching, specifically in the starting rotation. I mean, I made this point earlier this week. I greatly appreciate the career that Carlos Carrasco has had in the major leagues, right? With the Guardians and for a time the Mets. He was a very good pitcher. I don't need to see his career play out any further in pinstripes, because it's very clear to me that he is not a major league quality pitcher at this point. And I was on Julian Gulliarte's podcast before the season, before spring training, and I said on that podcast that Yankees fans better brace themselves for Carlos Carrasco before the All-Star break. I was wrong. It was actually on opening day. So I think that's a problem. Marcus Stroman is not very good anymore, but him going down just further questions the depth of this pitching rotation. That is going to be the problem here, because you have a great bullpen, right? They all are guys with monster off-speed pitches, right? They all have 70 grade or better off-speed pitches, it seems like, right? But if they're coming into a game down multiple runs after a pitcher gave up five runs, that's going to be a problem. Having said that, I do like Will Warren. I think he's shown that he can be a very good pitcher. They are getting Clark Schmidt back, which is a big deal. But Max Fried also being fantastic, that helps. But you're kind of on the cusp, right? You can't have another injury to your starting rotation, or you're in really big trouble. Now, can they go out and trade for pitchers? Of course they can. They're the Yankees, right? If you go take on a guy with a big salary, you don't have to give up a whole lot of prospects. I'd rather do that. But again, money being a finite object, you're probably going to end up trading prospects of some value for a guy that isn't making a ton of money. And then that question becomes, who are we trading at that point to get that pitcher? And is he a significant enough upgrade to warrant giving up all those prospects? This trade deadline is shaping up to be dicey at best when it comes to starting pitching options, Ryan. So I'm not entirely sure what you can do from a trading standpoint. The only thing that I think you could theoretically do is be quite aggressive in promoting some of the guys that are in high A or double A right now, who are very impressive, mind you, right? Cam Schlittler, I think, is a perfectly fine back-end option right now. I don't think he's anything more than a back-end guy, honestly, but you could use someone like Cam Schlittler right now. There's a non-zero chance that Bryce Cunningham and Ben Hess, heck, even Elmer Rodriguez Cruz are with the Major League pitching staff by this year. That would be pretty uncommon for the Yankees. They're pretty conservative with promotions, but you're getting to a point where those might be the best options. And if you're the Yankees and you're trying to win, you should be calling up the guys that are best positioned to succeed.
Yeah, and to your point, when you talk about upper-level minor league depth, I mean, on the position player side, in AAA, I mean, it's like Jorbit Vivas, Everson Pereira, TJ Rumfield. And yeah, like you think of those guys and you go, maybe you get a reliever for them back at the deadline. It's very like Benjamin Cowles, where
sure.
I kind of think of, I honestly think of TJ Rumfield and I'm like, oh yeah, cool, Ben Cowles, he's back again. Awesome, cool. What reliever are we trading him for? Because
good player. He's just kind of hamstrung by being a first baseman, you know?
Yeah, first baseman who, the raw power has never really like consistently materialized. Although he made a really good post talking about his pull side power and that improving. That will appeal to a major league team,
yes,
I think, to get a reliever back. But that going to be enough to get a starter? And I don't think so. And the big thing is too, when you mentioned the lack of starting pitching options, that means that the top pitching options are being bid on by teams with better farm systems. So,
Yeah.
if the best pitcher available is Pablo Lopez, well, you best believe the Los Angeles Dodgers are probably ending up with Pablo Lopez if they need a starting pitcher. Or if a team like, I don't know, the Orioles kind of haven't shown that level of aggression consistently, but if they wanted to, they could. If the Red Sox wanted to, they could. And at some point,
Yeah.
with prospects,
Yeah.
I think you could explain it better than I could, but
Yeah, you don't have a Kobe Mayo card, to pull. You don't have, the Red Sox are not going to trade Christian Campbell, but they've got a lot. Luis Perales would probably be the best pitching prospect in the Yankees system, granted undergoing Tommy John, but they can do that. They can pull a lot of other guys that are middle tier prospects, the Connolly Earlys, the Nelly Taylors of the world that the Yankees just don't have right now. Not because they can't develop, but just because they've made a lot of trades for those kinds of guys already. And I hate to say this, but heck, even the Mets are better positioned to get a Sandy Alcantara, right? The Yankees would really have to go gung-ho, and what are you offering to the Marlins that the Mets can't top and would be willing to top? I don't know the answer to that question. You don't have a Nolan McLean or Jonah Tong. You're hoping that Ben Hess and Bryce Cunningham and ERC become those guys, but they're not those guys right now. And I just don't know where you go in the trade market unless there's a guy like a Griffin Canning or someone like that with a very obvious low-hanging fruit in terms of pitch mix, in terms of pitch grips, right? Like that's the kind of guy that I think they would be going after, because you're right, Ryan. They cannot compete with the Dodgers and the Mets and heck, even some of the middle tier clubs in terms of what they can offer. They're probably a bottom 7 or 8 farm system at this point.
Yeah, and again, even if you wanted to trade one of those big name guys, like that's a decision. It comes with consequences, and consequences that you have to live with, not just this year, but for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So that opens up its own can of worms. Now, shifting gears, because we talked a good bit about the major league team, and I want to focus on the farm system. I think this segues perfectly. The Yankees going into 2024 had a pretty well-rated farm system on Baseball Prospectus. Now, at the end of last year, and especially going into this year, that stock has dropped a lot. What are some of the big reasons? If you could list 3 reasons, what would you say are the biggest reasons why that ranking has dropped so much in just 1 year?
Yeah, number one, I think it's graduations, right? There have been the Volpes and the Welleses that have graduated to the major leagues. Number 2, trades. And number 3, there were a lot of injuries last year. And that's actually carrying into 2025, unfortunately. There's a lot of injuries right now to Yankees guys. There's the Chase Hampton, who's arguably the best pitching prospect in the system when healthy, was hurt for a great portion of last year. He's out all this year with Tommy John surgery. That really stinks, right? Henry Lalane, who I wish people could have seen him in 2023. He was so fun to watch. 95 to 97, good command of a slurve that probably needed to be enhanced to look more like a slider, but still really good change, good command, 6'7", weird arm slot, right? Like really fun. He's not pitching again. He's got a shoulder injury. And you also had Carlos Legrand hurt last year. Now he's healthy this year. That's a good thing. But you had a lot of guys in the DSL and the complex league who were either hurt, bad, or both last year, right? And so you didn't really have many of those guys in the lower levels breaking out every year like the Yankees seemingly do. There wasn't that one arm. There wasn't that big bat that was really breaking out. Edglin Perez would probably qualify as that guy, and he might very well be that big breakout guy. But they just didn't have breakouts last year. If they had the massive breakout like Agustin Ramirez in 2023, right? Like we'd be having a different conversation about this organization. But going into the year, they had one top prospect in our 101, obviously that being Jason Dominguez, who I still have some reservations about. But it's just been a lot of trades, a lot of trades, and you could make a case that many of those trades have not been very good. Some of them have been excellent. And by the way, Juan Soto qualifies as an excellent trade, no matter what people want to say about it. Jazz Chisholm was a pretty good one, although they paid a pretty good dime for him. But there's been a lot of other trades where I'm just not sure exactly what the thought process was. And I'd like to see them be a little bit more. I'd like to see there be significant upgrades if you're making trades moving forward, because I think it's just been marginal upgrades that they've paid a lot of money and a lot of prospects for, and I just don't think that's a tenable way to maintain a good farm system, and that's a big reason why they're down, in the low 20s right now for prospect team organization rankings.
And it's interesting, too, because you mentioned Augustin Ramirez, and I think you could argue he was probably the best thing they had going for them last year at the minor league level.
100%.
And he got traded. And so, like, the best thing you kind of have going for you, you have to trade him because, who else do you really have to offer? And in regards to when you mentioned trading prospects and not really getting the best return or for getting marginal upgrades, the gap in player value between Trent Grisham and Alex Verdugo, I think, was marginal. If not, you could argue Grisham was the better player. And trading Richard Fitz to get Alex Verdugo, I know Fitz just got hurt, but still, trading Richard Fitz to get Alex Verdugo to make your team arguably not better is, I think, a good example of that. You just traded Richard Fitz to do what, right?
Exactly. And on top of that, you continued to roll him out there to the point where nobody was willing to give him a major league contract until the Braves were desperate, because they also have no upper minors in position player depth. But I mean, that should tell you something, right? That he's not getting a major league offer until late March, right? Trent Grisham absolutely should have been in center field long before this year, right? Just confounding decisions again at the major league level. This is not player development specific, but it ties into player development in that the final stage of player development is letting your young guys play or letting the better players play and not having veteran deference, which is exactly what the Yankees have been doing. And so you hope that the veteran deference case goes away. So A, younger guys play, and B, you're not spending money again on those second and third tier guys, and you get to keep a Richard Fitz, who, by the way, would be a very nice depth piece for them this year.
Yeah, look, again, you sit back and you go, hey, what if you can play the what if game, and I think a lot of times you see some fans do it in a way that I think is like overly, all right, this is just hindsight. But I do think that in a lot of cases when it comes to the farm system, I don't think it's hindsight. I think that in some cases it's like, hey, well, this is what we could have done. This was arguable at the time, and it remains either A, it's aged worse, or B, it aged about as bad as some people said it could. So,
yeah.
Again, I was a big Richard Fitz guy for a while, and I was like, damn, forgot for Alex Verdugo, who I've never really been a fan of. I'll say it now. Like, I've never really been an Alex Verdugo guy.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
But at least there are new prospects, new arms in the organization who are, right now, fingers crossed, currently healthy. And Ben Hess and Bryce Cunningham had really impressive first starts. I know Cunningham got roughed up a little bit today, but he did pitch 6 innings, so, I'll take it, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the new developments you've seen from them since being drafted, and why should fans pay attention to these two guys?
Yeah, first of all, Ben Hess was pretty husky coming into the major league draft, right? Like, no one's gonna hide that fact. But when I was in Sarasota watching the spring breakout game, he looked noticeably thinner. And so, look, Alabama's a very good baseball program, but there is a difference between collegiate training and professional training, right? And when you're also in the minor leagues, you have a little less that you can get away with than you can in college, and even for the SEC. And so I think there was a lot of time spent in the weight room. this offseason, and just getting a little bit more nimble and athletic on the mound, I think went a big way for him in the way it did for Alek Manoah coming out of West Virginia, who was even huskier than Ben Hess. But he really gets down on the mound very well, and so added athleticism for him is a big deal. He's throwing strikes, which is a big deal for him. Could it be because he's a little bit more nimble? He can get down on the mound a little bit more? It's very possible, right? With Bryce Cunningham, it's interesting because it's not that there's anything significantly different about him. I thought that his slider looked a little different from last year, and I actually was told behind the scenes that nothing's actually changed with his slider. I do think he has implemented a cutter to get to jam lefties with, which I think that was – there's some questions about the change-up viability right now, but if you're able to go jamming in lefties on the inner third of the plate and on the inside, inside, that's a big deal for him. He gets an insane amount of extension, and he throws 95, 96, so it looks more like 99 to 100 to the eye. It's a matter of just building innings with him because he was a reliever at Vanderbilt up until last year. And so the question becomes, can he maintain a workload that is conducive to Major League starting nowadays, which is only 120, 130 innings, and you're deemed a starter at that point. So can he become a workhorse? He certainly has the frame. He's a big dude, really athletic, gifted arm talent. I think there's more upside with Bryce Cunningham than Ben Hess, and there are quite a few people in public and private scouting circles that also have that sentiment.
I remember talking with you about this at the minor league complex, where it's like, yes, Cunningham blew that game in the spring breakout, but I walked away like I couldn't care less. Like I was flashing 90 and 98 in a shorter outing.
Sure.
So much different than over 6-7 innings, but it's still flashing 98, 99. And when you draft anybody, you have to sit back and say, hey, what are we going to end up getting from them in the big leagues? Cunningham, the upside because of that fastball and that just having a little more juice on that fastball, I'm lockstep with you. I've looked at Cunningham as like the guy where I'm like, there's that chance that, I mean, it's he reaches that next level, and we're having some pretty fun conversations about him. And that's no slight to Ben Hess at all. That's not. It's just
no.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like sometimes it's just guy throws harder. You just look at him a little closer.
Yeah. And he's just a little bit more athletic than Hess. I think there's more strike throwing ability. And like in the case of that spring breakout game when he blew it, right? There wasn't StatCast data that day, so a lot of people that weren't at the game or didn't watch it just look at the box score and they see all the hits he gave up. I mean, let's be honest. He was getting dinked and dunked, and he had one well-hit ball down the right field line off him. Like, think like baseball happens, right? Like, we play the game of baseball. It's not played on a Excel sheet, unlike some people who think that. Things happen, right? And that even goes to the Major League team. Like, when you lose a close game, baseball happens, right? And even today, there was a little bit of that in his start against Brooklyn. But I wasn't noticing, like, any noticeable drop in command or authority. Like, the fact that he still went 6 innings and still gave Hudson Valley a chance, that tells me everything I need to know. Like, I'm not worried about his stuff. I'm not worried about the swing and miss. I'm not worried about walks or hard contact. I'm not worried about any of that stuff. I think he's got the chance to be the best pitching prospect in the system this time next year.
I love that you mentioned getting through 6 innings as a positive, because I really love. I think the art of a pitcher being able to pitch deep into games is being lost for a myriad of reasons. Not like, pitchers don't want to work anymore, right? It's not that. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but having a pitcher who's capable of throwing a lot of pitches and pitching deep into games is a rarity. And if you can get that if you get any signal that a prospecting organization is capable of pitching 3 times through without completely crapping themselves, usually you kind of put them on a pedestal a little higher than some other guys because everyone knows, hey, this guy's like one of my favorite, fun pitching prospects. Don't look at their numbers third time through. And that's the case for even big league guys. I mean,
yeah,
I'm a big Clark Schmidt guy, so I've been battling that third time through the order thing for years now.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of spring training, George Lombard Jr. Was someone that you wrote a lot of positive things about because of what you saw in Tampa. What were some of those things that really excited you? And what are some things that you're still hoping to see as he matures?
Man, he is a specimen, like a physical specimen. He went from being this wiry athlete akin to Carlos Correa, again, only in stature, right? I'm not talking about his outlook, but in stature, it was very reminiscent of Carlos Correa, right? Tall, lanky, had a real cannon of an arm at shortstop, had enough range, but it was really the arm that was going to carry him. He came into spring, and I saw his legs, and I'm like, I didn't think that was George at first. I didn't think that was GLJ. But he's got tree trunks for legs now. Like, it's just like, where did that come from? But the thing about GLJ, I've always heard behind the scenes that the makeup was 80 grade. And I mean, that makes sense, right? He's the son of a major league bench coach, a very well-respected guy in the game, bench coach for the Tigers, who had some major league service. And so he's a baseball lifer. He's worked really hard at his craft, and he hits the ball really hard for a shortstop, like really, really hard. I was so impressed with his at-bats and his command of the strike zone and just like the confidence he played with. Like, there's just some elements, like, yes, we can look at the numbers and say that his max exit velocity was incredibly impressive for a shortstop, right? He's making more contact. He's got a more compact swing. He's making contact against all these different pitch types. He's pulling the ball because he's getting out in front, right? He's not going the opposite way as much, so he's allowing his power to play even more. Like, all that's great, right? But there is an element to scouting of just like, this guy understands where he is able to do damage in the zone, and he knows to take a strike if he's not going to do damage in that part of the zone. And the process of player development is getting to a point where you are able to get to those parts of the zone and do damage with it. And that's what he's working on. So I think the key for GLJ is going to be continuing to do more damage against secondary pitches low in the zone. He has done an amazing job at getting to fastballs in the upper part of the zone. He has no issue with velocity. He will hit it out of the park. He'll hit it 430 feet to left center, no problem, right? But it's about getting to a point where his swing is able to adjust to those secondaries. If he does that, he will be an all-star shortstop. I'm going to make the case with the BP team, and I don't think I'm going to have a lot of pushback on this, for him to be a top 25 prospect in the sport in the mid-season update.
I mean, that would go a long way for what we talk about again with that outlook where, hey, you look at the current state of the Yankee farm system. Again, it's not great. Like, it's just like, that's the objective truth. But if you get those key developments, just as quickly as you can go from top 10 to bottom 10, you can find yourself right back closer to that top 10 group and in a position where you go, hey, our farm system, we can go out and get impact players, or we can pull from within to have impact players that help us in 2026 or 2027. And I look at third base and I go, I don't see a long-term solution there. George Lombard Jr. might be the only long-term solution you can really look at in this organization and say, hey, he's got a fighting chance to really be a big leaguer. So,
yeah.
I do think the excitement's palpable. I got to take a picture with him, and when you talk about like his size, someone commented, "Is he really that tall?" And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's tall, but I also it doesn't help that I'm not that tall. So I said something a lot less, I guess, explained than that. I think I just said I'm short as bleep.
Well, no, I can assure you that GLJ is also tall, so it's not just you. He's tall.
Yeah, and his, again, like as you mentioned with the swings, I mean, it feels like you're watching someone who's going to be a big leaguer. It does.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate one of the big reasons I had you on was not just your understanding of data, but your feel for scouting. I think that there's so much that our audience will appreciate from hearing someone not just talk about, that they're being well informed statistically, but also being able to know what they're seeing. And that's a big part of it with prospects because we don't have public data for most of these guys. George Lombard Jr. has played one season with StatCast data, and he'll play this entire season most likely without it. So I think that stuff's important. And speaking of public and private, kind of sectors here, that was a weird segue. I really
no, it was all right. It was all right. Yeah.
Landing there.
I've heard way worse transitions.
I appreciate that. I'd give it. I'd give that one. I would have given it a 50.
I'd give it a 45. Like it was passable.
45.
Like it's a major leaguer.
Okay, I'll take it. Now Spencer Jones, because he's the notable big dude in the Yankee organization.
Yes.
Not the only big dude, but the notable big guy.
Yes.
And look, on the public and private side, I think it's fair to say people have written off Spencer Jones, and it's for understandable reasons. Like, he is swinging and missing a ton, and I get it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's not the case. It's actually really good timing at 2 home runs today now that I ask you this question, but you have actually kept some stock in him. You have talked about, you're not, 100% out like I'd say most people are. What would your case be for still believing in Spencer Jones, and why aren't you 100% out right now?
I mean, Ryan, let's think about this, right? How many 80 grade size adjusted athletes have 80 grade max exit velocities, have shown power in the minor leagues, and oh, by the way, have been hitting full time for 2.5 years? There's not many of those guys. And I've had this debate with agents, with scouts that are out, and they always point to, we've never seen anyone with a 36% strikeout rate in AA become a productive major leaguer. I would venture to guess that even if his strikeout rate remains 36% in the major leagues, Spencer Jones can be a model breaker in that sense, because when he hits the ball, it's gone. It's just gone. He had another 2 home runs today that were unbelievably impressive. It's just like he's barely swinging the bat, and it's going dead center 425 feet. He's striking out a bit this year, but I mean, are we just going to pretend that strikeouts don't exist and that there aren't guys in the major leagues with very high strikeout rates that are very good? Even if he strikes out 30% of the time, if he strikes out 30% of the time and he hits you 25 to 30 bombs a year, plays plus defense, oh, by the way, is a really good base runner, you're talking about a 4 or 5 win player there. Ellie De La Cruz struck out just as much in the minor leagues. Now, granted, he was 19 and 20 years old. But again, I think there's a conversation that people aren't considering here, that he became a full-time hitter his final year at Vanderbilt. He's been a full-time hitter since mid-2022, right? So he's got as many plate appearances as a guy that's been on the prep circuit that's in the pros now, like Xavier Isaac, right? Xavier Isaac is way higher on prospect lists, doesn't play a premium position, and has as many plate appearances between the college and pros as Spencer Jones does. And we just pretend like his strikeout problems will get better over time. I'd much rather take Spencer Jones at that point. So it's all the other things that Spencer does that's so exceptional. We're talking, no other tool that he has is below a 60. And there are some that are at an 80, right? If his hit tool gets to even a 30 and he's striking out 30% of the time, he's going to be a 125 WRC plus guy in center field with really good speed and base running acumen. That's a really good player. And that doesn't require him to strike out significantly less than what he's doing right now.
I love that you mentioned the center field part of it, because I have pleaded with Yankee fans that the one thing that you have to remember with Spencer Jones is that he can play above average defense at a premium position. I'd say above average is underselling it even.
Yeah, he's a plus. He's a plus.
Yeah, that's value right there. The pressure on his bat is not as great as I think people have made it out to be. And that's why I also kind of pull my hair out when I hear people go, why is he not moving to first base? It's like, No, why would you do
No,
that?
no.
Can you actually? I know this isn't on the question sheet, but could you maybe go into why we should not move Spencer Jones in first place? I feel like this is an important thing. People, I know, I know I shouldn't have to ask you this, but you've, I think you've seen it enough too. I've seen it. I know you've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting into the area of Twitter that I try to stay off of, but at the same time, name another 80 grade size adjusted. Name another 6'6" guy in the minor leagues that has probably 70 graded speed at this point. Like the only guy in baseball that is this archetype is Ellie De La Cruz and O'Neal Cruz, right? O'Neal Cruz. I mean, if you want to talk about comps, and I'm not a big comp guy, but if you wanted to go down that road, O'Neal Cruz is a very good comp here. And we have no question that O'Neal Cruz is a major leaguer and an above average one at the very least, right? Like there's a real chance that Spencer Jones is a 55 at the very least if he strikes out 30% of the time. He could be a 60, but the way to describe it to people that think he should be at first base is he is an 80 grade size adjusted athlete. What that means is he should not be running that fast at that height, at that weight, but he does because he is a physical specimen. When you go into the Major League Draft Combine now, they take all these different times and verticals and arm speed, right? And they give you an overall athletic composite score. Spencer Jones had the highest composite score in MLB Draft Combine history up to that point, okay? So that's the kind of athlete that we're talking about here. He's able to play center field. I've seen it. He runs like he's 6'2", but he's 6'6".
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned O'Neal Cruz because it feels like O'Neal Cruz is like the disappointing version of Ellie De La Cruz to some, like, the guy who had a bunch of hype, hits the ball really hard, runs the bases really well. And I think you and I would agree. I'd much rather have a 108 WRC plus from Spencer Jones than figure out how much Yankees have to pay to get a 108 WRC plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
go ahead. No, because I know you've got something rolled.
No, but you're 100% right. I mean, even if he's a 108 WRC plus guy striking out 32% of the time, he's still a 108 WRC plus, say, playing in center field. Like that's the thing that I don't think people understand. And the way I would kind of phrase it to people, and I once heard a coach in the Dodgers farm system put it this way, but would you rather have a guy with a 110 WRC plus that strikes out 30% of the time, or would you rather have an 85 WRC plus guy that strikes out 18% of the time? I mean, that's a question to ask, right? And you might want to have that guy that strikes out 18% of the time on your bench, right? Like you want those kinds of guys that can put the ball in play, and you want those guys that can play small ball, but over the course of a season, you absolutely want the guy that has the higher WRC plus, that plays good defense, that's a plus base runner, right? So I don't know. Like, again, like we're also talking about someone that really doesn't have that many plate appearances in college and professional baseball combined. He has as many plate appearances as a 22-year-old in theory, if you really think about it. And we're not calling out any 22-year-olds about being, a bust. So another 2 home runs today, and probably should be in AAA pretty soon. So
yeah, and the point I was going to also make on top of that was, we can reference an earlier part of this episode. What did the Yankees give up to get what they thought was a league average hitter in the outfield? Richard Fitts. The Yankees are paying Cody Bellinger $20 million. I think they would be not thrilled with, but satisfied with a 108 WRC plus. So $20 million worth of just money, which could go to a lot of really good players and maybe a starting pitcher that could really help this team.
You could have just paid Juan Soto too, but that's
right,
a whole different discussion.
Tagged it onto your offer, could have, and if you want to throw it back to Verdugo trade in regards to rotation, literally a starting pitcher who would help you right now. Like that's what it costs to get a 108 WRC plus hitter in center field. So And
Yeah.
I love the term model breaker because, yeah, Spencer Jones is just different. And I think that there is value in just talking about the fact there's this guy out there who doesn't make sense athletically. And maybe by not making sense athletically, hey, his striker rate won't make sense and he'll still make it work. I don't think it's a definite stake in the claim that, oh, yeah, he's a big leaguer, this and that. But should you be 100% out? I think 100% out is just way too far for me.
Put it this way: if the Yankees offered Spencer Jones to teams, all the very smart ones would be probably paying 115 cents on the dollar for him at the very least, because you just get these athletic freaks into your organization. You see what you can do with them. Like, that's just the truth. And I mean, there's also things behind the scenes that weren't very well reported on that I knew about last year, but have come to light. He had a lot of things going on off the field as well last year. He's undergoing another swing change, especially like specifically a loading sequencing change that I think will help him in the long term. But I mean, these things take time, right? And again, we're 2 weeks into the season, and he looks incredible. And he should be in AAA. Like, people should not be counting this guy out. Like, if you want to give patience to, the Oswald Perazzas of the world, you need to give more patience to a guy who's 10 times the athlete that Oswald Peraza is, who is athletic, by the way.
Yeah, look, you can swing and miss twice in a count and still hit a ball 450 feet. That's the beauty of the sport. Now,
Just ask Aaron Judge.
Yes. Shout out to Aaron Judge, who I don't know how that first ball didn't go out. I'm still baffled. Sticking to the theme of Tampa here, I want to give an opportunity for you to talk about a prospect who you got to see in Tampa or just kind of evaluate over the offseason, who maybe doesn't have as much public hype, doesn't have the name status of a Spencer Jones or George Lombard Jr., doesn't have the draft pedigree of a Ben Hess, that fans should know more about and should pay attention more to this season.
Yeah, I'll give you a hitter and a pitcher. The pitcher is Griffin Herring. We've had conversations about him. I actually got tipped by someone before the season began to be on the lookout for a kick change, which is the new pitch. And basically, it's a very hard to throw change up. It's very hard to command, but if you can, it's got some ideal movement characteristics that is platoon neutral, so you can use it against lefties and righties. Herring was a reliever at LSU, was kind of the fireman for LSU, and was very, very good. But with a new change, he's a fastball slider change guy. He doesn't overpower guys with his fastball, but it's got a pretty flat approach angle in the way that like Brian Wu does well. Like, he doesn't overwhelm with induced vertical break, which is just, how much is your ball fight gravity going up. But he's got a very flat approach angle. So basically that means that he's releasing the ball lower, and the angle of the pitch remains higher than it would perceive to be from that release point. So it's a very deceptive fastball, right? His slider is good, and this new kick change looks incredibly impressive. And he's a lefty. So if you're talking about a fastball slider change, he's probably got like I would say probably an underwhelming maybe like an average with the flat approach angle that it has. The sliders of 55, and this kick change looks like a 55 with enough command. That's a really solid pitching prospect that people need to be on the lookout for, and I think it's a matter of time before they get him to Hudson Valley, and that Hudson Valley rotation would be stacked more than it already is. So I would be on the lookout for him. And then another guy in Tampa actually is Edglin Perez. I remember when we watched him, he was showing off a cannon of an arm. He was just throwing guys out left and right, showing a bazooka of an arm. I think he just threw out another guy today per a video from Yankees Farm. Another really great follow. You should give him a follow if you don't follow him already. But yeah, he's got some really impressive traits. Like, the Yankees just go with these catchers that are really bad framing and blocking, that hit the ball really hard and have bazookas for arms, and they believe that they can work on the framing and the blocking elements. They are one of the best organizations at developing this. Austin Wells, who I was convinced was not going to be a major league catcher, I was right until I wasn't right. And it's because of their ability to, some of their catching coordinators are the best in the business. And so this is kind of a play on that idea, is that he hits the ball really hard. Granted, not at optimized launch angles at this point. There's still some horizontal spray where he goes the other way a little bit too much. I'd like to see him pull it a little bit more. But he's got some really impressive strength and bat speed. He could be the next Agustin Ramirez type guy in this farm system. I would say that's, there's a good chance, and there's a really good case he's a top 10 prospect in the system now. So Edglin Perez, Griffin Herring are your two guys.
In the case of Perez, whenever I hear Agustin Ramirez, my ears just perk up, man. That was my guy. That was my like, people who have watched this show or have like followed me on Twitter. When Ramirez was in the system, that was my guy, dude. I liked getting Jazz at the time, but I really had to come to grips with like trading.
Oh yeah, no, it was a coping.
Yeah, it was really like, all right, well, Jazz is fun.
Yeah,
I'm not upset about this. I'm not. I swear. It's like the meme where it's like, I'm not angry.
Happy and sad, right?
Yeah. The mask one, too, where it's like the person who's like smiling, but they're actually just crying.
Hiding.
Like, trying to get into the hype. Like, I posted a Jazz edit the second he landed. I'm just like, tears down my face.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Marlins. Now, for Griffin Herring, it would be really cool if Griffin Herring would come on Fireside Yankees and talk about his kick change. Oh, wait, looks like he might, or may have already. That might have already been recorded.
Wow.
Teaser. I love throwing teasers in there. Really good timing on that. Your timing has been, spectacular. Spencer Jones hits 2 home runs. George LeBar Jr. picked up 2 hits today, although I don't know how hard they were hit. And you know what? I'm just gonna ignore that part of it.
Yeah.
For the sake of this point. And Griffin Herring, you're hitting all these notes right now.
It's almost like we should have a full-time podcast, Ryan.
We're throwing a lot of teasers here. There's a lot of conversations to be had. Griffin, there's a lot of teasers in here. Now, for the final question I wanted to ask you, because we've talked a lot about some, very real things and things that, have long-term impacts on the favorite team of everyone watching this. So let's throw that out the window. No more real stuff. Let's go into the world of fantasy here.
Yeah.
You can take 2 prospects in the Yankee organization. Does not have to be a top 30 guy, just 2 prospects. Take their best tools and combine them. Who would it be, and why would it be those 2 guys?
I would take every tool of Spencer Jones with Yorbit Vivas' hit tool.
I would also just love one of the shortest dudes in the organization with a guy who's a foot taller than him.
Yes.
It's also a funny picture to think of. But yeah, that's just one of the greatest players who's ever lived.
Yes. If Spencer Jones had a if he had the ability to put the ball in play like Yorbit Viva does, who strikes out I think it's 13% of the time and makes contact in the zone 90% of the time. If he did that, he would be a top 10 player in baseball.
He'd be a top 10 player ever, like a 90 zone contact rate.
Yes, yes.
This is just the greatest player who ever lived.
Imagine it's like Aaron Judge with slightly less power, but also plays center field. It's basically Giancarlo Stanton in center field.
Yeah.
And
Giancarlo Stanton, when he played right field, he won an MVP. I was almost gonna say, guys, you guys know Giancarlo Stanton was pretty good when he with the Marlins.
Yes.
That was the most captain obvious. It's
so
been
funny.
so long since that MVP. It's scary long. It's been 8 years.
That's hard to believe, man.
Yeah, I remember being like, oh yeah, Giancarlo Stanton. He that home run derby, that was cool.
You were a little guy at that point.
Yes, I was. I actually remember watching that home run derby and the one after that because Gary, I think, beat him in the first round in 17.
Yeah.
And I also remember thinking this is the easiest home run derby pick ever when Judge won it that year because it was the same year.
Yeah.
Aaron Judge hitting home run. I was like, this is a cakewalk.
And they took pictures next to each other, and I thought at the time, I'm like, man, it would be a lot of fun if he was a New York Yankee. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. And look, I know that the injuries, they suck. I get it. But, the feeling of Giancarlo Stanton in the postseason just eviscerating a ball. The one he hit off Tanner Bybee, I actually will never figure out how to pronounce his name. But that ball is
you got
one of
it.
the most satisfying ones ever. Good God.
Yeah. Look, when you treat the Yankees like the Yankees in the way that George Steinbrenner would, Giancarlo Stanton would be a fantastic part of that compliment, right? You're not worried about money. You just go out and get a guy that hits balls really hard, and so yeah, he was so fun to watch, and there's a chance, there's positive updates on him. I don't know how legitimate those are. Players tend to be a little optimistic on their recovery timelines, but if he comes back, that's obviously a big addition to their lineup. If he's back and healthy, granted.
Now, I guess this actually should segue to one question that I didn't put on the sheet also, but I kind of want to ask now because I think it's very relevant to the conversations we had. Giancarlo Stanton comes back. What are you doing? Giancarlo Stanton comes back. What are you doing?
Oh, boy. I don't know. I really haven't thought about it, to be honest with you. But, man, it's going to suck for Ben Rice. I would almost, I don't know. Do you give Ben Rice opportunities in the outfield to challenge Jason Dominguez? Because Dominguez has not looked good. I'm just going to say it, no cap. He has not looked good. He does not look prepared at this point for a major league season. I could be 100% wrong, but I've always kind of been the lower guy on Jason publicly, in fairness. He looks brutal out in left field defensively. He's made a couple of nice plays, but there's also just moments where it's just what are you doing, man? Do you put Ben Rice in left field at times and try to prepare him and keep Bellinger in center, Judge in right, and send Jason back? I don't know, but you can't take Ben Rice out of this lineup right now. You can't. It'd be malpractice to take him out of this lineup.
I fully agree. And then the conversation, too, is, I think Goldschmidt's played well, and, maybe his value ends up getting overstated, but the lack of right-handed hitting makes him a lot more important than just, he's hitting well. Yeah, he's hitting well, and he's one of the few guys that you can say, yeah, he's going to crush that left-handed pitcher on the mound. When there's a lefty on the mound, you're kind of like, all right, auto sim until the righties come up. When Judge comes up, you think something could happen. Rice has kind of surprisingly been one of their better power hitters against lefties. That bomb off of Tyler Holton, oh my God. Even the one off of Puck, I know that one wasn't as meaningful because they were down, the game
Sure.
was over. But it doesn't, I don't care. Yeah, I tweeted out when it happened. Yankees lost. I did not lose. Yankees lost. I did not lose.
The Ben Rice agenda is alive and well.
Right, there are two teams I root for. They're the New York Yankees, and there's Ben Rice FC. Right,
Ben Rose.
Yeah, as long as one of those two teams win, I've had a successful day. Right?
Yes.
Both of those teams did not perform particularly well today. Rice only had one hit, and I can't believe I'm saying this. But
only had one hit.
Right, when Ben Rice has one hit, I'm kind of like.
Yeah, oh man, that's unfortunate.
The bar is so high right now.
Yeah, he and Spencer Torkelson are the biggest stock arrows up probably in baseball this year. It's just he just looks so much more confident. The bat speed has gone noticeably up. He's already optimized. We don't need to talk about him again, but he's really good. And I think that this is here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Smith, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I'm a little sad this is coming to an end because this was a really good episode. Smith, where can we find you? Any final thoughts before we part ways? And again, where can we find you? That's very important because it would be a crime, it would be a shame if people who listen to this did not get a chance to follow up your work.
Yeah. Well, maybe this shouldn't be the last time we have a podcast like this. Just throwing that out there, but. So you guys can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it at Smith Brickner, just one word. I don't tweet as much, but whenever I go to games or whenever I'm watching stuff, I'll give some commentary. We have a lot of articles that go up on baseballprospectus.com, a lot of scouting profiles, and a lot of other really good research too that Baseball Prospectus does that I highlight at times. So I'll do that. I'll do some video coverage as well. Hudson Valley's well, not really my backyard, but kind of sort of. I can drive an hour and a half and get there. And so we do a lot of that. But I'll be doing a lot of live tweeting at times. I might do some live commentary of Yankees games through an app called Playback. So there's a lot of different ways that we'll engage throughout the season. But Twitter's mostly where you can find me at Smith Brickner, and then also on baseballprospectus.com. So,
hey, again, check out his Twitter, check out baseballprospectus.com. Make sure to check Bakota every single day, because that's part of the morning. I've seen that kind of be a thing, and I'm like, I'm for it. Morning routine, go open up, get a cup of coffee. I'm a black coffee guy. I will always be a black coffee guy.
I respect it.
Yep.
Put a little salt in it, actually, for the listeners. Black coffee, you put a little bit of salt in it, and it takes away some of the bitterness. I know it sounds crazy, but you got to trust me on that one.
It's 7 p.m. EST, 7:49 EST. I'm going to try that right now.
Oh, boy. God bless.
Right now. I have quite a bit to do, so I'm doing that tonight, honestly.
There you go.
But, again, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys, Yankee fans, on the next one. Peace out, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Perfect.